Okay, well, hi everyone, and thank you very much for watching or listening all around the world. Liam Hartree back with you today with another episode of the Simply Inspired podcast. Today is episode 451, and today I am joined by a very, very special guest. I'm really honored to welcome to the show Fave. Now, I hope I'm pronouncing that the right way. It's probably my accent makes it a little different, but this man has got an incredible entrepreneurial story, guys, is something you don't hear every day. So obviously he is the CEO of Island Avenue Apparel. He is the first Pacific Islander to be featured in Nordstrom. He is also the co-owner of the vegan burger chain Belief Burgers as well. Former football player. We'll talk about that as well, from athletic success to business success. Motivational speaker, a man who also not only makes money but contributes to the lives of a lot of people in a very positive way, including the youth of today and tomorrow, which is something that we'll touch on there. And there's also a number of accolades that he has specifically within that area of helping at-risk youth, which we'll find out more about later on. But just a truly inspirational, rags to riches, underdogs can win, anything is possible, whatever you want to call it, guys. Super positive vibe. And my friend, I'm super honored and also feel very blessed to welcome you to the show. So thank you for making time for this, my brother. Appreciate it.
Wow. Well, I mean, first off, that was one of the best intros that I've ever had. So thank you so much for that, Liam. I'm always humbled. It's an honor. I come to you guys with great gratitude in my heart to be able to continue to share my entrepreneur journey with all those that are viewing, including yourself, Liam, with hopes that we could continue to inspire and motivate all those that are on this same journey. But yeah, thank you so much, Liam. I know we're in two different time zones, right? You're clear across the world. I'm here in Los Angeles, but it's yeah, just pleasure to be on here, and I'm ready to rock.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, I'm glad you liked the intro, and that's one of the fun parts of what I do is I've actually got a list here of all the things you've achieved because with the questions, I kind of roll with it, but with the list of achievements, I thought, okay, I need to do that justice. I don't usually do this, but I'm also gonna give a shout out to the School of Hard Knocks as well because that's actually where I heard
Hey,
you where that guy he stops people on the street, he stopped you on the street, interviewed you, and even in that little clip, there was a lot of inspiration. So that's what inspired me to kind of find out more about your journey. Now, one of the things is I'm not necessarily going to do this like, the very linear, this happened and then this happened and this happened today. We'll probably move around in time a little bit. However, the whole, what I was saying, rags to riches, and, you made it to the top and everything, and you come up the hard way, that does warrant looking very briefly at your upbringing, I think, and I do want to touch on that very briefly. I don't really want to dwell loads on that, but I just want to give people a little bit of context because people look at the man you are now, everything you've achieved, and we're going to focus on that primarily. But it wasn't always that way. So, can you share with us a little bit about those very early years, but specifically where that seed of wanting to achieve something came from? Where that fire inside you was first lit. At a very very early age. Let's start there, please, my friend. Thank you.
yeah. Well, kind of taking it back. Let me, I guess you could say, contextualize things, especially from a Pacific Islander point of view, for those that are kind of looking at me and wondering exactly what nationality I am, right? So, my family comes from the island of Samoa, which is in the South Pacific. I'm sure The Rock is a great reference point for everybody. So, The Rock's family is from Samoa as well. And in terms of that migration pattern for us was, families came from Samoa. They either went to Australia or New Zealand. Some of us went to Hawaii, kind of just settled there, which is why there is a huge population of Polynesians and Samoans there and family members of mine. And then some of us came and congregated along the West Coast. A lot of us came to Los Angeles. We hopped off the plane in LAX. We saw the palm trees and the beaches, and it looked like the South Pacific. And we said, well, we're going to go ahead and set up shop here. Some of us went up to Northern California. Some went further down south to San Diego. And so, born and raised here in Los Angeles, born in the 70s, raised in the 80s and 90s. And so, if you can kind of imagine what life was back in those days, that just like any other I guess, communities that migrated from their motherlands is that you congregated amongst your community because you felt comfort there, right? And so Samoans as well as Polynesians were no different. And so we created smaller pockets of communities here in Los Angeles, specifically within the Carson area, the Long Beach area, as well as the Compton area. So there's a huge population of Samoans there. However, even in those days, just like any other community, even with the Irish community and Italian community in New York, you hear stories of them striving to defend themselves, right, amongst other community groups or ethnic groups, right, in which they term those, I guess, groupings as gangs. And so, living in Los Angeles, we weren't exempt from that. I was impacted by gangs as well as gang violence, mainly because a lot of my family and friends either joined and unfortunately lost their lives to gang violence and to street violence, I guess so to speak. I come from a family of 10. My older brother was a hero of mine, and I lost him in 1992 at the height of the Rodney King beating, as well as the violence between police as well as our communities. And so that, to answer your question, Liam, that was the turning point. As a young man, I lost him at 14 years old. But just to go through such a tragic event, even prior to that, I started to have family and other kind of distant cousins and friends either go to jail forever, get these long prison sentences, lose their lives. And a majority of my family during the early years, I got so, I guess, numb to it that, a majority of my family members died due to violence. And so after a while, you just kind of, you grow an immunity to it, unfortunately. But then when my brother had passed, I kind of utilized that tragic experience to say, okay, we're at a pivotal moment. My brothers and sisters and I, we know exactly what that life entails and what the results are. You're either going to go to prison or you're going to the graveyard. We didn't want that, nor did he want that for us. And so, lo and behold, growing up in LA, football was a big thing, right? And so, a lot of great college and NFL athletes came out of the LA high school scene. And so, at that time, football was every Friday was Friday Night Lights, and the community came together. Everybody really rooted for their high schools around that time. And so we utilized football and our football prowess to attain scholarships to be able to achieve higher education, but most importantly, get up out of the neighborhood, right? And so that was sort of the pathway in us to really displace ourselves and go on to college and kind of see the world from a different perspective, but also to get away from the neighborhood and everything that was going on there. And unfortunately, even when I was in college, I would get calls from family and friends of several friends just passing away due to gang violence. But same time, we were on another path because we knew that that's not what my brother had wanted up for us. He wanted something better for us, and so lo and behold, we were able to pursue that. To answer your other question in terms of how the entrepreneur seed was planted, well, I'm sorry, I have to give credit to my father, who was the first entrepreneur in the family. He was a painter. He's a professional painter. So my brothers and I grew up on the job site. And so fortunately enough, we were able to see him go out into these affluent communities. Now, this is where the seed was planted, right? Of what affluent communities are and what that lifestyle actually looks like. So if you're familiar with Los Angeles, the surrounding affluent communities are Manhattan Beach, Palos Verdes, Rolling Hills, Newport Beach in Orange County, Huntington Beach. So we were able to see these homes, these custom homes, mansions being built because my father was the painter. So he would go bid for the job. We would, just like any up and coming family business, we go help him on the job. But I will never forget, Liam, these experiences. One specific mansion in Palos Verdes Estates. I will never forget this. Walking into this home didn't look. It was a nice picture of it on the outside, but you had to see the inside. You walk in, and I was to this day I still get goosebumps of that time walking in the front entrance and seeing glass around the living room with literally a full a full palm tree was built in the middle of the home, in which now there was like a koi pond there. Again, I didn't even know what koi fish was, right? It was glass and you could see the ocean. And I just sat there and, as a kid, I probably was 8, 9, 10 years old, just like, how do these people actually attain a lifestyle like this? In my mind, I'm like, I want to live here. I want to, feel what it feels like to wake up in a home like this. And so I was just dreaming. And to this day, I joke, but my brothers and I know that you could put me on the job site now. I have no clue what I'm doing because I would just, I was just literally walking around the house. My dad yelling at me like, "Hey, you were supposed to sand the door, or, grab the paint." But I was just a dreamer, right? So that seed was planted there from a lifestyle point of view of one day providing a lifestyle like that for my family I have now, my wife and my son, but also from a business standpoint. Because what I also saw was that my father, that to this day, his first language is Samoan, and then him approaching a client in which more often than not, some of these folks were, their first language was not English as well. So, Chinese and Indian. And so although there was a language barrier, the commonality was business, right? I provide a service. This is how much it costs. I pay you to provide the service, right? And so when I saw that the client that lived in this mansion barely could speak English as well, then I knew that, hey, despite the fact that there's this language barrier, this specific ethnic group and this family decided to move their family here, created a business, however they did it, despite the language barrier and the cultural differences, and they live here. So I knew that the barrier of entry into business was very, very low. I just had to figure out exactly how they actually did that. So to answer your question, the inspiration came from our father, of exposing us to that type of lifestyle, which to this day I'm very, very thankful for. Obviously impacted by gang culture here in Los Angeles. However, the dichotomy of growing up around gang culture, all right, that despite what gangs had produced, the results of it, several family members passing away, there was a sense of love. There was a sense of community that actually came about that. Right? It was because my family gang, they defended me, right? So this dichotomy between love and violence was always presented. And so fast forward, I utilized such tragic experiences of growing up in Los Angeles and witnessing that type of violence. And it provided me with the intestinal fortitude. It provided me with a understanding of how to overcome extreme adversity, right? How to respond to that and keep moving forward. And so I utilized that concept now as a father and in business that I would never to date at this point in my life in 2025. I knew that it was a blessing having gone through such tragic experiences earlier because I never experienced something so painful again. So it really prepared me, right? I read one of 50 Cent's books. He had asked him like, how do you attest to all your success in business? And he said, if you knew the environment of which I was raised in, this is nothing because the I guess transactions that he used to do, he was taking a risk of which he could lose his life. However, in business now, right? If anything, you're losing the business or it's more money, right? So he had mentioned that, if you contextualize things that, that this is nothing compared to where I came from. And so I understood his viewpoint on that because now that as I approach business, however, it's been the most challenging experience of my life and trying to build businesses and trying to scale businesses. And it's challenging me in every aspect in terms of emotionally. Um, to this date, like it was those tragedies that I overcame earlier on that provided me with a tool book, with a roadmap, with a blueprint on how to overcome adversity, how to look at go right through that tornado, right through that hurricane, learn from it, grow from it, and continue pushing forward, right? Because the one thing that's inevitable when it comes to entrepreneurship is that you're going to face adversity on a day-to-day basis, right? Entrepreneurship versus sports is that sports has an off season. Entrepreneurship, as you know, Liam, is 365. We're getting in the ring every day, right? And we're fighting this fight every day. Some days you win, some days you lose. But it's that desire, that passion that keeps fueling you to get back in that ring and keep fighting. So I believe it was those characteristics earlier on that had taught me how to navigate my path. And truth be told, in full disclosure, it hasn't been perfect. And as you and I know, Liam, it's not supposed to be perfect, right? Everyone's journey is different. So don't go comparing other people's journey, especially what you see on Instagram, because a lot of that is just people's highlights. But what I strive to do, especially on podcasts like yours, and shout out to James that runs School of Hard Knocks, is I like to tell the truth, right? Because I believe that in telling the truth and talking about some of the challenges, or you can coin them as losses, everybody that's tuning in can learn from those, right? And how to navigate that, which is what I do. And we're akin in the sense where, we mentor young people as well as young entrepreneurs. And so some of them have aspirations of going into apparel. So it's up to me to say, hey, this is what you want to do. If you want to play with the big boys and land these meetings with the likes of a Nordstrom, a Nike, a Neiman Marcus. But these are the things that you have to have in place in order for you even to get the meeting done. Right. So hopefully that had answered your question. Sorry, you got to forgive me if I ramble on because I'm very passionate when it comes to either my personal journey or sharing entrepreneur advice because it's really, really been a fulfillment of mine. And then being able to give it back in real time, I just get a lot of fulfillment from it.
I love that, man. Absolutely love that. I mean, it's an amazing answer. You're a very eloquent speaker, by the way. So as you were describing all of that, I could really visualize everything you were saying in a lot of ways as if I was there, and that doesn't happen all the time because I listen to different stories. But it makes so much sense, the upbringing, the football, seeing the affluent housing, everything you said there, the connection between those lessons. I will say, I am sorry for the losses that you endured at that time, but at the same time, because I feel that, I mean, I'm a bit sort of, people call it empathic, whatever word you want to use, but I felt there was something there that was going to come up. So, and in a way, I'm not surprised, but at the same time, I feel that, and, you're honoring their memory by what you do, now. So I just want to say that, by the way, just so I don't forget to say that because it's a very important thing. Continuing on from that line of reason, I mean, there's a few things that you covered there that I was resisting the temptation to go off on tangents, with lessons you learned from the football and everything. But you said that success is about proximity, and I saw another podcast quite recently, where you were sat with somebody physically, and you were having this conversation about that. And I'd like to talk about that a little bit more because obviously seeing those affluent houses, seeing those people living that way, interacting with them versus thinking ahead, with the gang violence and all of that stuff where it kind of leads people. A lot of people don't do that. I speak to a lot of people who've had to, go to prison or actually, get shot or stabbed if it's in the UK and, have that real close call to think, man, my life has value. Whereas obviously in a different way, you figure that out. But I'd like to go deeper into the success proximity aspect because one of the lessons that comes up, I mean, I know it sounds really obvious, but it comes up over and over. Who you surround yourself with determines your success. They say, we become the sum total of the five people with whom we spend the most time, and all of these things. I can attest to that. Changing my peer group, moving out here as well, has been a big thing. So I'd like to go deeper into that lesson because, especially if there's youngsters listening to this who are kind of still in that life or around that life. It doesn't have to just be gangs either, but just, those kind of communities in general. A lot of people out there are going through it. And I'd like to kind of use this as a lesson for them to go a bit deeper into what you said about success and proximity, who you surround yourself with, because from what I'm hearing, that's one of the biggest reasons that other people kind of succumb to that and you didn't. So let's go a bit deeper into that concept, please, my friend. Thank you.
Well, thank you for asking that question, and I would love to expound on that, Liam. So let's kind of start from the beginning. As I had mentioned, that seed was planted earlier on, that specific type of affluent lifestyle that I want to provide for my family. However, when I walked out of my door living in Los Angeles, I guess you could refer to it as inner city Los Angeles, I didn't see that lifestyle, right? So common sense tells me is that if I don't see that lifestyle here, it's not going to change. I physically have to go exactly where that's at, right? So a blessing came along where we had to move to a where my son was going to high school at, and it's the powerhouse when it comes to football here in Orange County. And so it wasn't until we moved there and I started to meet his teammates, in which their teammates stayed in affluent communities because it was a private school that, and I started to mingle and build relationships with their parents and then get invited to their homes. That's when that seed that was planted earlier on started to bloom, right? Because now I was in the environment of where these successful entrepreneurs lived and they mingled and they congregated and they networked. And I was able to see how they were raising their kids as well. So a phenomenal blessing. And so when I had mentioned that concept of success is about proximity, is that sometimes, and again, I could recommend it, but it's a big leap of faith that sometimes you have to analyze exactly where you're at. And sometimes you literally have to displace yourself from where your comfort zone, right? Because I wasn't born and raised in Orange County. And you physically have to go live in these communities. However you do that, you that's just what has to get done, right? So fortunate enough, business has been able to thrive, and I've been able to live in affluent communities. Now, once I'm able to live in these communities, now I'm building relationships with them. Now we're running into each other at the gym, at the local coffee shop. Now, remember, there's an understanding, Liam, that if in fact Liam and I live in this affluent community, you obviously have to be doing something good to pay for this either rent or lease or you own it, right? Without even saying it. It's just an understanding, right? So just with my personality and knowing that I'm living amongst other successful business owners, it's about, hey, I'm by what type of business you do. Now I'm exchanging information. Now I'm networking because we literally live in the same community, proximity, right? So now instead of me having to go through the executive assistant, the secretary to get to the owner is literally my neighbor, right? So I've done, lo and behold, I've done deals literally at the game room, in the business room of these communities that I live. I've started a deal within the gym because they see me do, my morning routine, right? And proximity. But where I grew up at, these successful entrepreneurs did not live there, right? So in order for me to actually thrive at a business at the highest level, I had to go exactly where they live. But this is just me because, in a sense, sometimes I'm an extremist in that sense, right? I'm going to go over there and live with them and congregate with them and build relationships. And the beauty behind it, Liam, these are some of the most beautiful people that I've ever met in my life, right? I've built phenomenal relationships. They're considered my mentors to this day. So as I continue to build my business, I'm calling them because they're, in a sense, I guess, analogous to the NFL. They're in the NFL, and I'm striving to get exactly where they're at. So I can stop by their offices, in which they're, my one of my mentors is a finance guy. It's probably $1 billion company now, right? At the time, 10 years ago, they were moving about 500 million in revenue, right? So I'm able to see them. And then not only that, as you had mentioned, my son, he had a 9-year-old son at the time. Now he's like an up and coming NASCAR driver. But what I did see, Liam, was the example he was setting for his son, right? He only has one kid and it's his son. So that was the tie that binded us because he was very close to his son and I'm very close to mine. And so to see him groom his son with the business, he's only 9 years old, right? And provide a lifestyle for him with the expectation that he's going to pass on this asset to his son. I was I was enamored. I was blown away. I was inspired, and I said, "That's exactly what I want to provide for my son." So to this day, these are some of the most beautiful people, some of the most giving people that I've ever met. Right, and not only that, a lot of them are self-made. A lot of them didn't come from me. Right, so that was another tie that. So any high-level business questions that I've ever had, they're just a phone call away. And so I can't help to really emphasize that wherever you are in your journey, wherever it may be, you're the entrepreneur. You have to have this vision of where you see yourself going with the business. But most importantly, if you really contextualize things, we're grinding for this company to scale and make X in X amount of years, right? But at the end of the day, what you're really doing is you're hoping that this business could thrive, in which it equates to financial success, and then you could provide a lifestyle for your family, which in essence, that's what exactly what Liam did, right? So the question is what type of lifestyle do you want to provide for yourself and your family? And what does that number look like? Right? Some people didn't want to live in Manhattan Beach or Huntington Beach or right, and that's fine. I did because I've seen what that lifestyle entailed, and I wanted to provide that for my family. Right? So everybody's journey is different. Everybody's definition of success is different. I just saw success in these affluent communities because this is the lifestyle I wanted to provide for my family. Right? So my goal is build a multi-million dollar businesses and then provide this type of lifestyle for my family. That's it. That's what it is along the way, right? So, but being in these affluent communities, I can't help to emphasize that more often than not, these affluent communities, your neighbor is the chairman of a private equity firm. Your neighbor is the CEO of Pepsi. Your neighbor, right? It's in your community. So you don't have to go get an interview or try to hunt somebody down on LinkedIn. More often than not, they live in your community. And that's why I've always been a huge proponent of success is about proximity. You have to go where the action is at, Liam. You have to physically go there. But even before you do, last point on this, even before you decide that you're going to do that, as you and I know, Liam, there's a level of confidence. Okay. One has to have in order for one, move to a community like that. Okay. Now you're around that successful community. And then two, there's a level of confidence you have to have in order to approach them. Right. Because you could be in the room with Bezos and Cook, right? And Larry Fink and a Steven Schwartzman, all these high level guys, you could be in the room, but not say a word. Because again, it takes a level of confidence to even approach these people that are doing business at a high level that you want to either be mentored by or even follow in order for you to build a relationship. Unlike others, as you can see, Liam, I don't have an issue with that.
Okay.
If Jeff Bezos was in this room now, right? If Zuck was in this room now, I'd be the first one, literally walking up to them and starting a relationship or trying to establish a relationship. So I didn't have that issue. So even before doing that, I have to emphasize that there's a level of confidence one has to have in order to physically make the move and then live around successful people and then build those relationships, right? But it's truly, if in fact you don't see it within your own community, your own neighborhood, you have to go where the action is at.
Absolutely. I love it. I mean, I love your passion, by the way. I love your whole energy. I mean, I always have since I first saw you on the School of Hard Knocks and everything. But yeah, even what you're saying there, man, it is an absolutely amazing lesson. And you know what's really special about that? I'll come to my next question now, but I just want to say as an observation as well. I love the way, I was thinking how to put this, how you've grown through these things and your evolution, your definition of success, sorry, has evolved. Now that's going to be my next question now in a moment. But before that is something I absolutely love about like how you give back, how you contribute to people, how you remain humble. Because in a lot of ways, you've had this success where, you don't seem to have anything to prove. And also what you were saying earlier, where nothing as bad as what happened to you when you've grown up is going to happen to you again. I hear you on that. And I find that as well, with the people who give back, they've grown past that. Whereas when people still kind of have the inadequacies and the issues and the things they kind of haven't worked through, then they're still more like, I'm all about me. Whereas when you were saying earlier about the beautiful people that they would have presumably grown to something similar. But it's super cool. Anyway, my next question, the definition of success. I mean, one of the things I love about you is, your whole ethos, your whole vibe. I mean, everything from the integrity that you've kept, as in something like, keeping your heritage, and being proud of it, doing your brand the way you want to do it, not the way someone else tells you. I mean, there's lots of kind of integral things that I can see, but I might actually come back to that topic. But before we do, in terms of what you said there about the definition of success, I also want to go deeper into that because I would imagine as you've evolved, as you've got bigger in business, as you've made, more money, impacted more people, started motivational speaking, on and on and on, your vision of what it means to be successful has presumably evolved. So I'd like to get into that evolution process, and I'd like to get into basically what success means to you today versus what it meant to you back then, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. Another great question, Liam. I can't help to emphasize that. Love this question, and I'm glad you brought this up. At this point in my life, my true definition, well, first off, before I answer that question, let me really, really emphasize this. And this goes back to me being a former Division I football player, right? And now as a father of a professional football player. I've emphasized this from the beginning because what I've seen sports have done for several athletes, especially at the highest level. And I would emphasize this to my son. Football is what you do. It's not who you are as a human being. And the reason why I had emphasized that is because for so long, if you played football from the year 5 to if you were lucky enough to play to your 30, right? Think about that. That's 20 plus years of doing one thing. And if you were one of those athletes, highly recruited, 5-star athlete, you go on to Division I, you play in the NFL, you're put on this pedestal from the age of 5 because of this natural talented prowess that you have. Okay. So what ends up happening is you, as a human being, identify yourself as a football player. That's who you are. And you gain all this adulation, this accolades for being a football player. And naturally, again, any human being that has gotten that type of notoriety would fall into that, right? The problem with that is that there's a shelf life on your career, some longer, some shorter, right? And if in fact you've identified yourself as a football player, the problem is when it's time to hang up the cleats, it's almost like a piece of you dies. And I've had this conversation with several of my buddies that have played at the highest level. My best friend, we're actually creating a movie out of him and I's relationship. Let's just say it's Remember the Titans meets Menace to Society. It's a true story, right? Hopefully you'll be the first one to know when we drop that, Liam. But in any case, like he won the Super Bowl, the first Super Bowl with Tom Brady, right? And he told me, he's like, wow, I've been identified as a professional athlete or an athlete my whole life. But the day I had to hang up the cleats, it was almost like someone died because I had no idea who I was. Right now, I'm just a normal person. I go to Starbucks. I have to stand in line. No one's opening the door for me. Right? There's no more VIP. The girls have gone away. Like now, he's just this normal person. He suffer with this identity crisis because they've identified with this professional athlete or athlete their whole lives. So to this day, I've always emphasized this to my son. Football is what you do, it's not who you are. Right? Then I ask him, who are you? I'm a man of integrity. I'm a man of honor. I'm a man of love. I'm a man of community. I'm a man of God. I'm a man of respect. That's who you are. Okay? That's who you are as a person. All these other ancillary things as an athlete, an entrepreneur, and motivational speaker, those are ancillary. But this is who you are as a human being. So if in fact that goes away, these principles will never, because this is who you are as a human being. Right. So I had to solidify that first. Right, Liam?
Absolutely.
Now, my definition of success at this point in my life, despite the journey that I'm on, because truth be told, Liam, and you and I could agree, this whole entrepreneur thing, right? Obviously now it's become the new rock star, right? The entrepreneur. Everyone puts it in their bio. I'm an entrepreneur, right? When in essence, you, again, this is not for the weak. You and I know this. You and I know this, right, Liam? And so, with that being said, my definition of what I believe true success is, and I'm going to relate it back to a lot of the tech guys that I just talked about, is um, great health physically, spiritually, and then financially. That's my definition of success. So those 3 areas I attack every single day. There's a morning routine in which I attack the health part, the spiritual part, and the financial part. So at this point in my life, that's what success is. And the reason being, I say, health physically and spiritually, and then financially, because as you can see, there's been several examples of people attaining the success financially, but not in health and not in spirit, right? And I'm sure you and I know several people, man, millionaire, billionaire, but yet he goes and jumps off the London Bridge, right? How does that happen? Like, how can you explain it? Because the world has perceived success to be this number in the bank account. When in essence, true success, as you and I know, Liam, is being healthy physically and spiritually. Now, if in fact you can crack the code and then be healthy financially, then you bring all that together from a holistic standpoint. My belief, this is me now, okay, that's true success because you've been able to establish those three levels of success, and now when it's time to give back, you're pouring from a full cup now, right? Because your health is great, spirit is strong, and finances is great. Now I could give back to the hood, right, Liam? Now I could get on Liam's podcast and share my story and provide some type of motivation and inspiration for those tuning in. Why? Because me, first off, I made sure that I attacked my health spiritually, physically, and financially, right? And so everything starts with me. Right? I can't come on this podcast and perform at a high level with high vibrations and provide all the insight needed if in fact I'm not taking care of me, Liam. Right? It's although it's counterintuitive, I can't give back if I'm pouring from an empty cup. Right? And so many of us, especially from an entrepreneur standpoint, is that you neglect the health part, both physically and spiritually, to go over here and get the bag, as they say, right? And then you get it. But what think about this, Liam? Common sense tells me what good is landing the $100 million exit with a PE firm, and you're in the ER, you're in the hospital because you have heart issues and diabetes and metabolic. What good is it in the end? And to really contextualize things from a life point of view, and I just got this from another podcast that I was hearing, and it was kind of re-emphasizing. But my sister's a nurse. My family got together for Christmas. We all went around thankful for, and I never forgot this. And she was like, you know what? As a nurse, I was there for a lot of my patients that expired. Okay, and she said every single one of them had mentioned. When I look back on it, I just wish I had more time to spend with my family. Right? Now think about that. In the end, are we talking about the $1 million exit? Are we talking about all these different things? No. It's saying, man, sometimes like the things that are most precious is the things that cost nothing, which is our health, right? And so my priority on a day-to-day basis is that physical and spiritual, and then I attack the financial, right? And that's my true definition of success from a holistic standpoint. Because now, as I mentioned, I could deliver, right? I could deliver the message. I could be of service. I could mentor the youth because I'm pouring from a full cup. Hopefully that made sense, Liam.
Oh, it made more sense than you could imagine because I'm listening to that, taking it in. And the reason for that is, by the way, I don't want to go off on a tangent here, but I'll really quickly tell you, going back to what I was saying earlier, back when I was doing the photos of like all the famous people and everything, and that was my exposure to the affluent thing, like what you were saying. I noticed that. I noticed exactly what you're talking about, just from observation, just from repetition, from nothing particularly complicated. Just look, and just from looking at also the people who go and get the bag, as you were saying, the people who are acting that way, the people who are all about also, the people who are not of service, the people who are all about me, 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 were very miserable. And I remember spending time with them and thinking, okay, well, you've supposedly got everything from a perspective, but you actually have nothing. And then I remember them meeting the ones, exactly what you were saying there, balance, the family life, the spiritual life, the health, physical, mental, spiritual, everything, all of those things that you just said. And I remember noticing that kind of pattern and thinking, okay, and then this is going back to the entrepreneur thing as well. I agree completely because I just define it very much as kind of living life on your own terms. That's the way I've kind of simplified it down for me. It's very much, look, if I could live on my own terms on like $10 a day or something, I would do that. But in the world we live in, you can't do that. You've got to live on, you need a lot more money to live on your own terms. But it's not about the level of money. It's about basically a type of freedom, for me, and a
Yes.
type of integrity, and not being in that 9 to 5 situation where people are barking orders at you, and they basically tell you what you're going to do for the rest of your life. Now, you know, people providing for their family by doing that type of work, I'm not knocking that, but I'm just saying when it comes to the integrity, I think the entrepreneurial thing is a different breed. It's like even if I was to go and get a regular job or try and be a regular guy, I'd probably get fired anyway. I mean, I have to do my own thing. So I very much relate with what you're saying on that. That's not a question. I'm just saying, but I very much relate to that. Now I want to ask something just for a little bit of a little bit of juice for our listeners who want to know about this. We were talking earlier about contextualizing. When you are making these very big deals like the Nordstrom thing and some of these very, very big deals going through, I'd like to go deeper into what actually goes through your mind because everyone looks at it and think, okay, that's awesome. I mean, I would love to do that. But I would like to go a bit deeper. And when you realize also, so this question kind of has two sides. I mean, I'm also going to say, when you first looked at your bank account, whenever you first had this massive amount of money coming in. I mean, I don't know how much you made in a year was the most amount you made. If you can share that, you can share. If not, don't worry. But the principle is when you first looked at that and you say, okay, wow, I mean, I'm here, I'm at this level. And then when you've continued to obviously build on that level by getting bigger deals. Now, I'm connecting this because it's not about the money, like what we were just saying. However, when you're talking about like spiritual and these different levels of success, everyone looks at the numbers and they crunch the numbers. You made this much, you did this, you did that. But how did you feel inside when some of those very big moments happened? Do you get where I'm going with this one? Because everyone focuses very much on the surface layer. Oh, well, he made X, Y, and Z. But, like when the Nordstrom thing went through, what goes through your mind in a moment like that? I mean, I'm just dead curious about this one.
Well, as you can see, I guess with my energy, I've been very, very ambitious and
Yeah,
very, very aspirational since a young age.
absolutely. Yeah.
Prior to me going into the apparel industry and launching the brand Island Avenue, I've always aspired to see the brand in big box stores. I've always aspired to do these big time collabs with these, icons like a Nike, like a FUBU that we landed recently.
So you always visualize, I'm sorry, but you're always visualizing, okay, that's very important as well. I was hoping that would come up, even though it might seem obvious. People forget about that. I mean, again, going back to when I was working with athletes, I would say to people, I'm sorry to cut in, I don't mean to, but but going back then, when I would speak to them, I would say, look, what separates you from the rest? Like, I want to do something with my life. And visualizing will come up over and over again. But sorry, yeah, I mean, that's really, really, I'm really glad you mentioned that. Anyway, sorry, carry on with what you were saying of like, yeah, when it actually goes through, because people don't appreciate the
Yes.
moment. I mean, people just look at the bottom line. I want to hear it in your own words. Thank you.
Yeah, so a couple of things. Let me harp on your relationship with Floyd, and you probably got this when you were around him, just taking photos. There's a
Yeah.
reason why he's still fighting to this day, right? He identifies himself as a boxer.
Mm,
He's been doing it since a young age, right? So does he really have to fight, Liam? Think about it. Unless there's some issues with financing, but does he really have to fight? He's
no.
literally gotten in terms of financial success already, but he still goes back to that. Maybe again, it's because that's what he identifies as a human being. I had to harp on that. Now,
Yeah.
in terms of answering your question, like I had mentioned, that I've always had aspirations of playing at the highest level, and this goes back to me being an athlete, right? And I've always said that I have several analogies that go back to playing football. I said, like, if we're going to play in the big leagues, if we're going to play ball, let's play in the big leagues, right? So if I wanted to launch a clothing line, I wanted to see it in the Macy's and the Nordstroms and the Neiman Marcus. That's just my desire, my wildest dreams, right? And so as we launched the brand from the name to the aesthetic, the vibe, I always had these visions long term that one day it'll sit on those shelves. Now, one specific detail that I want to bring up and earlier in the brand, I don't know if the viewers know, but the reason why I had named the naming behind Island Avenue, obviously, if you look at me visually, you say, okay, well, he's Polynesian, it's an island thing. I get it. When in essence, when I was in the early, I guess mid 2000s here in Los Angeles, there was a boom in streetwear. So there were brands like a Crooks and Castles, of the Hundreds, Diamond Supply Co. These are huge streetwear brands of young entrepreneurs, no design background, no business background, but were building multi-million dollar brands. I was inspired by that here in Los Angeles. So I said, if I'm going to get into apparel, I'm going to create my own version of a streetwear brand, apparel brand that's inspired by Los Angeles, and me growing up here, as well as the South Pacific. And I came up with some very hip hop, gritty LA names at the time. And I said, you know what, I could go this route, but is there a name that actually combines both the South Pacific and LA? And lo and behold, I landed on Island Avenue. And ironically, you may know, Liam, that Island Avenue is the street that I grew up on in Los Angeles. Okay. And so I said, well, what better name than Island Avenue? It encompasses me growing up here in Los Angeles, as well as our upbringing here in LA. And so lo and behold, there was about 10 Salmon families that moved on this one street. So we had a sense of community, culture. We had all of that there. So I wanted to encompass that, tell that story, and create a brand off of that. Now, the point I'm trying to make is I could have named it Island Street. I could have named it Island Block. Okay. But I named it Island Avenue. Why? Because the connotations of avenue flows a lot better, more marketable in a Neiman Marcus, in the North, in the Macy's, right? So even from the beginning, Liam, I had this long-term vision of creating a brand. It's going to be called Island Avenue, and more often than not, or I'm sorry, I have this vision and this aspiration of it one day being in these big box stores. Lo and behold, we're here. To answer your question, when we finally did get the deal, I think this story would be great for everyone viewing. That through connections and through my passion and through being assertive and relentless, I got to the right people. I got to the buyer there at Nordstrom. He had mentioned that if I could just send the samples up. But before that, I have to share this because I think people would be inspired, especially those in apparel. We hit a roadblock because in 2022 we were able to do a great pop-up here locally, did phenomenal with sales. We created a brand deck. This is what we were able to do, the numbers, the SKUs, and we sent it to every connection that we had. Didn't go nowhere. It wasn't until the beginning of 2023 I'm texting, I'm calling, I'm connecting on LinkedIn. Nothing, Liam. Okay? True story. One day we'll put it in our book or my book. True story, Liam. Out of all the people that I emailed, the one person that emailed me back was Eric Nordstrom himself. Okay? The grandson of the empire. He emails me back. Okay? Hey, Fawad, great to meet you. This I was like, now think about that. Let's talk about that moment now. That's the start of the Nordstrom journey, right? He emails me back, and I'm looking at him like, wait, this is it. This is the guy, President CEO Nordstrom. Hey, Fawad, thank you for sending this. Let me send you to my guy. He sends me to his right hand man. I get to the buyer now in apparel or anything having to do with retail. The goal is to get in front of the buyer, right? So I get to the men's buyer. I research him, kind of find out there's some common people that we know. And then from there, we get on a call, and he's like, "Hey, if you have samples, just send the samples." Now, again, I'm at a pivotal moment now, Liam. I could send the samples, okay? I don't know what he's going to do with it at that point. But in my mind, Liam, I said, if this is the only shot that I got, and you're going to tell me no, you're going to tell me no in my face, okay, Liam? So what I did was I made up hey, this Wednesday I'll be in their headquarters is in Seattle. The building been there for like 109 years. I'll be in Seattle. I have a meeting there. Maybe we could meet at 1, and then I could go to the meeting after. And he was like, "Oh, you have a meeting?" I was like, "Yeah, I have a meeting there." He says, "Okay, let's meet at 1 this Wednesday, whatever that date was." I hang up. My son's sitting there. He's like, well, Dad, you had a meeting? I said, no, I made the whole thing. I literally just made it all up right now. Right. And I've heard several other stories. The co-founder of Skims, and she's actually from the UK, phenomenal girl. She's doing stuff with Kardashian. She did the exact same thing. Right. She gets a hold of Kris Jenner. She says she's going to be in LA. She makes up the fact that she'll be in LA. She goes out there and seals the deal. So we get there. Great guy. Show him the samples. We go through it. But before he actually gives me his decision, I said, look, man, before before you decide, let me just tell you this. It's not just me. I represent a whole community that has been never had a voice at this level in business, whether it's apparel, any industry. If in fact you give Island Ave a shot, you're actually opening up an opportunity for a whole community that I'm hoping to provide that same opportunity. So what do you say? Do we got a deal? And he said, we got a deal. So that moment, we jumped for joy. I'm jumping up and down. I'm doing our what we call Faumu, which is the rock. I'm doing that in the office. It's a corporate office, so people are looking inside. It was a cool moment. So just to answer, I mean, it was a great moment. But as you know, this is business, right? It's great to have the moniker of, the first Pacific Islander brand to be featured in Nordstrom. But now it's game time now, Liam. Now you got to perform, right? So even though, you probably seen recently that DEI has been a huge thing going on now, a lot of programs that have been uh, cut with President Trump being in office, right? I've always said this. It's like, whether it was DEI or whatever it was, that we got this opportunity to get into all and to at least have these meetings with these corporations. At the end of the day, we're in business, and your product has to perform, right? So whether you got in the back door or the front door, your product still has to perform. So I've always been a proponent of thank you for the opportunity. But in my mind, just going back to football, I was an undersized linebacker, wasn't recruited, had to walk on. I've always been the underdog, Liam. And I've always said, I just need a shot, coach. Just give me a shot. I promise you I make plays. So I've taken that mentality from football and now I've applied it to business. So when I'm sitting down with the Nordstroms or the Neiman Marcuses or the Bloomingdales, in my mind, I'm going back to me being an underdog and saying, just give me an opportunity. I promise you I can perform. Right. So those moments, although great, memorable, lifetime moments that I always have and cherish, but at the end of the day, we're in business, Liam. So now it's about consistently putting out great product in which, remember, there's an understanding that this product has to sell because the buyer's job is on the line. Nordstrom is on the line, right? So yes, phenomenal opportunity, but we're in the game now, right? You're not a rookie no more, Bye. It's time to play, right? There's an expectation here that you got to perform. Okay, so yes, great moment. Obviously been blessed to have these high level meetings with several corporations, but I'm always thinking long term though. Once this meeting is done, what's the follow up? And if in fact we get the opportunity to do a collab, what does that look like? And at the end of the day, will it sell? Because we are in business, are in commerce, the commerce game, right? The product has to move. So there's always this understanding. So even when I'm creating collections that are coming up with my team from a design point of view, the business hat is also on simultaneously. So as they're designing graphic tees and hats and Letterman jackets, I'm looking at it from a business standpoint and saying, okay, is the Nordstrom customer going to buy that? Who's going to buy that? Right? So it's up to me as the visionary and as the brand owner to make sure that the design team stays on brand, but at the same time, the product has to sell. It may look good for Liam, but what about the Nordstrom customer? Is he or she gonna buy it? Right? So
Absolutely.
it's always the dichotomy, I'm sorry, not even dichotomy, the duality of, the business part as well as making sure that the creative is there as well. You got to slow me down, Liam.
I love it. No, I'm just taking it in because I love there, right? Lessons again, right? Consistency. I'm really glad you brought that up actually because that's something I should have said earlier. I mean, getting to the top is one thing, staying there is a whole other thing. And obviously you're doing both, right? So, I mean, there's a lot of things you said there, even going back to your son hearing you make the deal. I mean, I do love the behind the scenes because people don't hear that, people don't see that. And it does give it, the emotional content because then people need to feel that. Like when you went into those affluent houses and things, it's not really a logical thing at that time. It's like, man, I want to feel, the way this feels. So I'm hoping then when you share that story, it will give and transmit a little bit of that to the people listening. That's why I asked that question. But yeah, I mean, the margins, the bottom lines, I mean, all of this stuff, absolutely, that's what business is all about. But at the same time, I'm glad you kind of balance the creativity and the bottom line, because you do have both. I mean, you do have both. It's kind of like Steve Jobs with Apple or something like that. The way that he had such a creative vision for what he did and a great product and the
Business.
way of getting it out there. Exactly. And you do that, and not everybody does that. I mean, some people, the creative side of things isn't as good as it is with you. I mean, I'm just going to say that. So I'm glad you mentioned that. Now, last couple of things, because I'm going to have to go by about quarter past, 20 past the hour, because I said half an hour, didn't I? We've been here like nearly an
Yeah,
hour.
brother.
But last couple of things, I mean, obviously, following on from the consistency side of things, we've spent a fair bit of time looking back at what you have done, but there's also a lot that you will do. I mean, there's a lot that's yet to come. Now, I don't know how much you can say about this because, deals and things, they've got to go through their process and they get all the confidentiality stuff. But with anything you can share of exciting things that are coming up for you, with things that you can share about like things you'd like to achieve that you haven't achieved yet. And the reason I'm asking this, well, going back to what I just said, consistency, staying at the top of your game, but also keeping a love for what you do. I mean, at the end of the day, like you were saying, going right back to the beginning of our talk, you're in the fight every day, you're in the ring every day. Some days you win, some days you lose, whatever. You said that. Obviously, that's going to keep going for like as long as you're breathing, I would imagine. But in the immediate term, I would like to touch on some of the things you've got coming up to kind of illustrate that process for people that you haven't got to the top and then you're resting on, okay, I've done this now. You're continuing to expand, continuing to evolve personally, professionally. It's not just a brand, it's you as well. Because, like going back to what you said earlier, they are connected but separate things. Like you were saying about footballers, identifying with a footballer. There's the ways that you will continue to evolve, but there's also the ways that your brand will continue to evolve. I mean, I'm going to be listening to this back, making notes. There's so much in here. I absolutely love it. But that question, basically the future, as far ahead as you want to take that, my friend. And I think that's a great topic.
Yeah. But before I answer that question, another great question, Liam. I really want to emphasize because I think this insight will help everybody that's actually listening or viewing this podcast. A forewarning, right? Although on Instagram you see a Nike, Nordstrom, Bloomingdale's, or whatnot. Now I'll expound on that in terms of future plans with those guys. There's an understanding that when you're dealing with corporate, right? So if you land the Costco deal, the Target deal, the Nordstrom deal, right? There's an understanding that you have enough cash flow and or working capital to flow, meaning this. In apparel, let's just say that the summer collection coming up is lands in May 1st, right? But we've already sent line sheets and stuff, which is your designs, and we've gotten the purchase order. Okay, so technically, just make it very elementary that production probably takes about 3 months. Okay, so say we started in January 1. We received the purchase order, and Nordstrom says, hey, Liam, we got a purchase order for 100 grand. Okay, you have 50% margins on that 100 grand, meaning you have to put up 50 grand to make the 100 grand. Okay, now that's the first hurdle. Okay, where do we get the 50 grand? Okay, let's just, or do we have the 50 grand? Do we already have that reserve? Okay, hypothetically, we do have the 50 grand, we send it to production overseas, wherever you're doing. Okay, good. But production takes 3 months. So that takes us January, February, March. Okay. Now delivery takes another month. Okay. That takes April. All right. So that's 4 months of you already dished out 50 grand. Okay. In order for you to do this deal. So you deliver May 1st. All right. So that's 4 months already. Now, when you deliver, it's not to say you're going to get paid on May 1st. Now there's what they call terms. And again, I'm just trying to keep it as elementary as possible. With the majority of the corporations that you're dealing with, some of the bigger ones, I heard Walmart is like net 90 or something like, yeah. So majority of the time, you either net 30 or net 45. So you land everything on May 1st, you still have to wait another month and a half. So now remember, you have to float the business for almost 5.5 months in order for that 100 grand to come back. Okay. So I have to, hopefully I explained that in detail and clear enough for everybody to understand. That's the game that you're playing at the corporate level. Okay. And then remember, that's if everything goes right, that the 100 grand comes back. Chargebacks, defective product. There's all these other things that can happen. And then in order for that 100 grand to come back in full. Okay. So when you're aspiring or have these ambitions to play with the big dogs, just understand that that's the game that you're playing, which is very capital intensive. As you see, you're forking out a lot of capital up front with the expectation that the money comes back months from now. So you have to have cash flow and or working capital to float 5 to 6 months, which is where your online e-commerce business comes in, right? That's direct to consumer. You could get those sales day to day, month to month, right? To help you float the business. So the goal is to say, yes. And remember, I've dealt with brands. I have some of my buddies that don't even do the corporate thing, direct to consumer. They keep the full margin. They get their sales. They see it right then and there. I decided because I've never seen it before and I've always been inspired to have my brand in these stores, right? So now I understand how to manage and scale in e-commerce, the e-commerce part of the business, as well as how to deal with wholesale slash retail. So hopefully I answered that. Right? I really wanted to put it out there because I wanted everyone's expectations. I just wanted to address everyone's expectations when you're dealing with corporations, right? It's a lot of upfront capital. Purchase orders doesn't mean they're cutting you a check. That's just a promise that they'll pay you that if in fact you deliver and everything goes right. Okay, wanted to put that out there. Future upcoming collabs. So first out the gate, we're hoping everything goes well. That our first collab plus our summer collection is with the brand Fubu. Obviously, inspired by Fubu, what they did earlier on with urban streetwear was able to. Actually, it was the same time I met James. Spoke at an Alibaba conference in Vegas. We were all there, plus Damon John was there with Fubu. Me, again, going back to what I had mentioned, having the confidence, was able to land a meeting with him. I was able to gift him some of the Island Ave gear. He loved it. He connected me with his co-owner or his partner. Same partner, same co-owners, Fubu, to this day. From there, 4 days later, I landed the collab. Okay, this is me having a vision, saying this is what I want to do, and literally going in there and attacking and making sure that we get the deal. So Fubu, we've been designing, we have been working on this Nike collab, which is an Air Force One. It will be the first ever Polynesian inspired Air Force One, and we've been designing this almost for a year and a half. Obviously, recently, if you if you have been astute to what's going on with Nike, that they have a new CEO, so there was a big shakeup. Even the team that I was dealing with, there was a lot of changes there. So we're hoping now, all things go well, that we launch our summer collection, as well as the Fubu collab, as well as the Nike, the unveiling of the first ever Polynesian-inspired Nike Air Force One this June-ish is where we're at. And then I'm also been in talks with, as I mentioned, Neiman Marcus, Bloomingdale's, because there's a high-end, or even Saks Fit, there's a high-end, I guess you could refer to it as purple label, that's connected to Island Ave, in which that price point, because those are two different tiers, right? That price point would meet this purple label that I've been designing for Island Ave. So that's exciting there. There's another collab that we have going this summer with Disney Aulani, because obviously because the brand and its vibe and its aesthetic, there's a resort wear vertical that I've been striving to build. So I've been in contact with St. Regis in Utah, as well as Miami, the Waldorf in Utah. And so there's this whole other resort wear piece that we're exploring because it fits the brand, right? So if you notice, I'm sure you heard of Tommy Bahamas. And Tommy Bahamas, if you go to a resort, they're pretty much selling a lot of their stuff. So we're kind of replicating their model, and we want to be the more modern version, the more cool version of Tommy Bahama. And so, yeah, we've been in talks with Disney Aulani to launch there. And then not only that, really strengthening and building the relationships within Nordstrom. So we're in a couple of doors now. We really want to scale to all 93 that they have. And then Barton Pereira. Barton Pereira is a sunglass, eyeglass, very successful sunglass brand. And they recently got acquired by LVMH. And so we are in talks. I'm in talks with them tomorrow in terms of our collab that we're hoping to launch this fall as well. And the last thing that I want to just kind of put it out there, and I want to reveal it to your viewers and listeners, Liam. I've known The Rock. I know I mentioned him in the podcast, but I've known him going back 20 plus years, obviously because of our Polynesian culture and roots, right? A cool story. I was actually there in my partying days because The Rock's stunt double is a good family friend of ours. So I was there when he was actually getting the tattoo. So it was cool experience. Yeah. So I was there. So we have a long-standing relationship, and we're putting together a great collab on the apparel side that we'll hope to launch soon. So that's some breaking news and some great information for you guys. Inspiration, with hopes that again you see exactly what we're doing with the brand, and you think outside of the box. You look into your Rolodex of network and figure out how you can do exciting collabs in whatever industry, that you're actually in. So hopefully that answered that question, Liam.
Oh yes, and then some, and then some. I mean, wow, The Rock. I mean, everything you said there is awesome. I mean, you're rattling off the different brands, absolutely amazing. And as I said earlier, testament to your creative vision. The Rock, absolutely amazing. Hey, if he ever wants to do an interview with me to announce something like that, then we can get you on it. We can get you on the show, him on the show, me all together. It'll have to be a bit shorter than this, what we've done today, but I know I can ask some unique questions, and I will put money on the fact I can ask him one question at least in the interview he's never heard before.
Or we could do it live from Cyprus.
Yeah, there we go. Anything like,
Yeah.
absolutely. I know I could. Like I will say, that's part of my game. By the way, with this is I always say, when you said a couple of times during this, you said, "Oh, that's a great question," and this, and to me, I'm thinking, right, okay, if I can get a question that somebody says is a great question, it's a question they don't hear too often, maybe they've never heard before, something that gets them thinking. It's not like your run of the mill type of stuff, which I usually get, a couple of those in every interview. I mean, there's some stuff you have to cover this more sort of standard, but at the same time, I try and think of some things that are like out of the box. I bet you I could do that with him too. But anyway, that's another story. Anyway, my friend, I want to thank you because I know we said half an hour would be like over an hour, but it's a great length of time for people to be able to take in these. I was going to say entrepreneurial lessons, but it's much deeper than that. I mean, today we really talk about like the mind, body, the spirit, the whole essence of a person and what that success really means. And I think that even though we've covered the different topics, what you said when I asked that question about your evolution of success really sums up why I do this. And it really sums up a lot of the message that we've put across here today. Absolutely powerful. I want to thank you very, very, very much for your time. I will send this to you when it's released. I'll be very grateful for a reshare, please, as well. And I will definitely keep an eye on what you're doing, 110%. And absolutely, if you ever want to do a part two or something because you've got these different deals as well, we can do that too. I don't always say that, but I definitely think there's a few other things we could go into. But for today, I always say, and I'm going to close out with this, cliche, yes, it is, but if we touch even one person's life with doing this talk, then we've done our work. Now, it's going to be a lot more than that, but I always say that it's the right people at the right time. The right people are drawn to this at the right time to hear it, like where they're at in their journey. And whether you call it God or the universe, or it doesn't matter what label you use, that will connect people with this, with them at the right time for them, I believe, when they're ready to hear it, and not before. So, I want to say a big thank you for that. I want to also say, anybody who's watching or listening, follow this man on social media, guys. Follow obviously the Island Avenue, or follow him personally. Just Google the name, not hard to find, Island Avenue 5858. Also, please subscribe to my channel as well, guys, for more inspiring content. And my friend, I hope you enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you so much from my heart. One of the best interviews I've ever done. And I mean that from my heart because of what I said, because we're not talking about money, we're talking about like the real meaning of success, from the soul. So absolutely love it. And like I said, when I said I'm going to be listening, making notes, I wasn't joking either. So you've taught me a lot. I thank you for that. And I hope you have a great day, my friend. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you again. Thank you, Leon, so much for your platform. Thank you for phenomenal questions. I love the vibe. I'm always, it's always an honor to give it back to all those that are going down the same journey. And so I wish you nothing but just great health, wealth, and prosperity, you and your family, as well as everything that you're doing. Congratulations on the book. Let me know anyway on how I could promote it as well and help out with that. But thank you again. Continued success, Liam, there. And then hopefully we can go live in Cyprus soon, brother. Have a great rest of the day.
I would love to. And if your son ever wants to do one, just so I don't forget, by the way, I meant that too. He's more than welcome on the show anytime because you've broken the generational curses there, by teaching him the success. And then it sounds So that's your grandson, right, with the driving. I mean, it sounds like that level of success has gone down the levels. Absolutely love that. So absolutely, we will do. Great day and all the best to you and your family, your loved ones as well, my friend. I'll keep in touch with you. All right. Thank you again. Take care. Thank
He's a
you.
great speaker as well, so you'll love him on the podcast. Thank you. Thank you, Liam.
Thank you. God bless. All right. Bye now. Take care. Thank you very much for watching. Please subscribe to the Simply Inspired YouTube channel, and there'll be more videos coming soon.